All right, everybody, welcome to the FreeMind podcast. Nate and Kirshen here. We have our friend Carson Kegerreis of Bull's Head Public House over in Lititz, Pennsylvania. How you doing today, Carson?
Fantastic, gentlemen. How are you doing today?
Excellent. Thanks so much for giving us the time today. We wanted to kind of touch base with you and talk about your story and talk about Bull's Head and everything you guys have going on in the great town of Lititz. Lots of really good things at the restaurant and the bar, as well as at the community at large. Very, very growing community out there in Lititz, Pennsylvania, and Lancaster County.
Absolutely, man. It's one of those things I keep waiting for it to slow down, but it just doesn't. And it just gets bigger and bigger and grows. And not just from Bull's Head, just the town of Lititz just keeps getting put on the map for more and more reasons.
Yeah. What's the newest thing you got?
Pardon?
What's making it grow? What do you got going on?
Well, I mean, the biggest thing is Lititz it's pretty much the East Coast hub of the music industry. And a lot of people don't realize that. You have Tate Towers, which builds the stages. You have Clair Brothers, which runs the sound. And you have Atomic, which designs the stage sets for pretty much every musician worth a damn. And then they came together and they formed this thing, Rock Lititz, where the bands and the roadies can come in and run through live shows before they go on the road. That way they can work out any kinks that might be there. So like at any given time, I mean, this year I know like Elton John's been in town, Maroon 5's been in town, Fish comes to town a lot. There's just always someone. Like most of the time it's really under the radar and they might be here and gone in one day, but a lot of times there's usually someone in town.
Yeah, I went down and saw my friends Mark and Rebecca over at the bike shop over there. So Lititz Bike Works. And, I was over there talking to them back when they first opened up, and I could hear Bruno Mars performing because it was like in the beginning when the sound was still echoing out a little bit. And it was pretty awesome there.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about. And like a lot of people, when they think of Lancaster County, you think farmland, you think Amish. And a lot of people, when they think Lititz, they just think like cute small town, little boutiques. And then really it's like, no, you have this booming music industry that like sets the tone for like all entertainment in the country and around the world, really.
And let's talk a little bit about Bull's Head. You before all this happened, you guys were really pioneering things, and especially like Paul prior to that, kind of when he was coming in with the UK cask programs and things and bringing the cask beer, and that trend while it was going and extending through, he persevered very much past that, even to this day, kind of really keeping that niche. That part where the cask beer and the session beers and things like that. And then you coming into play and really enhancing that and kind of elaborating onto that too. Kind of talk about the progression of that. And obviously you guys have had a change of ownership and things like that, and kind of continuing to evolve through time and things like that from the pub style that you were into where you are today, still growing.
Yeah. When Paul Pendyke, he owns UK Brewing, which supplies a lot of the breweries, around the world with cask equipment, wanted to bring that to Central PA. So when he opened up Bull's Head, he really wanted to keep sort of the beer bar going, and a lot of places. I was just recently talking to a friend of mine in the industry about how I've only recently realized that we're one of the few, what I would consider beer bars in the area. Like there's a lot of places that sell beer. There's a lot of places that are beer focused, but like, I had the pleasure of hanging out with John Trogner at from Trogs a bunch of times this year. And when I would tell him things that we had on tap, he was like, people buy that? Like that's still a thing? Like, that's amazing. And I think you have a lot of beer bars where, and it's because the sales are there. I'm not by any means, trying to shit on them. But like they go for, places will have 12 taps and they'll put on 6 hazy IPAs. Like, that's fine. That's what's working for you. That's what the market's dictating. But we try to keep like old school things. Like I just got some Hofbrau original kegs in yesterday. I just ordered like some St. Bernardus stuff and like some old Belgian things that are still relevant here that I don't know how they would do in other markets. But we really try to keep that feel alive of like having different offerings from around the world, classic styles, classic beers, and really just kind of keeping everything for like something for everyone.
Carson, do you find that, distributors are selling you differently? And this, I guess, could be a two-part question. Partially with having such a unique lineup, are distributors selling you based on like, they know you know what I mean? Like they know what you love to have. So they're directing suppliers or distributors to come in. Or do you feel like this is what the distributors are selling? You just happen to be an account that takes some of their different stuff. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. I have most of my wholesalers, they know what we like, they know what I want, they know what I don't want. Right. So they're not really going to try to sell me on things that they know I won't buy. It's funny when we get new reps and they come in and they're like, hey, I've got this this Kona red ale if you'd like it. And I'm like, that's not a bad beer. It's not really what we do. But thank you. And then like 3 weeks later, they'll be like, so I got this Kona thing again, this package. And I'm like, again, like not hating on Kona, like that definitely has its place. It's just not really what we do. And then you see like that learning curve take effect. And then they start to saying like, oh, I got this and would you be interested? Sure. And I try to be, usually I just tell them like just to text me. Like I don't need doted on. I'm fortunate enough to have been in the industry long enough that I know what breweries do what well, and I know what I'm looking for. So like the reps that come in like every week, like, man, don't go where it's more needed. Like I'm good. I don't need to be doted on. You can just shoot me a text and say like, hey, I got, this delirium keg. Is that still something people want? And I could be like, yeah, down here, let's do it.
Is that like do you find that is, at least from my experience, I see that happening more now because of COVID. You get less stop-ins, there's more text, there's more emails. Was that an easier transition for you because you kind of always liked it that way? And are you seeing distributors do that more because it's you, or because I'm seeing that with a lot of other, buyers, that's kind of become the new route that, the ones that they don't have to do that for, they're texting and there almost is a better education because if you know what I mean, like someone like you know what you want, about the breweries. I wonder if that's also for some other buyers that are now having to transition to this style. Is the education getting better or is it getting worse? You know what I mean? It would be a kind of an interesting thought, experiment to kind of wonder where is that education level growing or is it getting less based on this kind of a system?
Man, that's a good question. I think, so to answer your first part, it was an easy transition for me because I do most things through my phone, through email. Actually, stranger though, was just talking to a few. Wednesday is usually like my big rep day. It's an office day for me. So it's just like moving around from table to table in the pub of like different reps coming through. And I heard a few times yesterday of people saying that they had buyers who were pissed off because they hadn't come in a few weeks. And I'm like, man, I would love that. Like that's, if you can text me and say like, hey, I'm not going to be in today. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. It gives me more time to focus on something else.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing worse than like, work's busy, life's busy. And like to take a couple minutes out of my day, I don't mind if it's going to benefit either one of us. But if we're just going to sit down at a table and you're just going to look at me and be like, well, I don't have anything new. I'm like, all right. So what are we doing here? Like,
check the box.
Yeah. And I know like they have stops they have to make and they have to like put it in on their iPads and stuff like that. But like, it just doesn't make sense to do it that way. As for the education thing, I think education has dropped. I think people, it's really weird right now because it's very much sort of like a Wild West feel. Because it's anyone's game and it's anyone's guess about what's going to happen and what direction things are going. I've noticed that, I'm sorry, like my personal opinion is that like, hats off to people that do hazy IPAs. Everyone's, profiting off them. It's a big thing right now. But to me, I don't want to say it's a gimmick, but like, if you're a brewery that just produces hazy IPAs, I don't really respect you as a brewery. And like, I'm not saying you're a bad person, just from a brewery standpoint, like, what's that telling me about how you brew it? That's not telling me about how good you are of a brewer.
Hazy IPAs definitely mask a lot of and that's
beer. Yeah, and then like you watch the price go up. Yeah. So like, whereas something like, Perpetual IPA can be around 150 for a half barrel and the number one selling IPA in the state, that then I'm going to have someone else who's relatively unheard of try to sell me an IPA for $270.
Right.
And I'm like, dude, what am I supposed to do? Charge $8.50 for a pint of something no one's heard of? Yeah. But they're going to want it just because it's hazy. And like the weird thing is, I can still do it here. Like I'm still in a fortunate enough position that we can move that. But I also draw the line, like just because I can doesn't mean I will.
Right.
And if it's not for me, like if it's not a product I stand behind, then I don't sell it. And if I don't think it's a good product, I don't move it. I don't care what it's rated. I don't care what like people are saying on message boards. If I don't think it's worth the squeeze, then I'm not pulling the trigger on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Actually, like in addition to that too, I think sometimes it's suppliers and breweries and we work other with distilleries and stuff like that too, and wineries, and sometimes even those high prices, sometimes they're warranted and sometimes they're just an issue where they're not understanding how to price correctly in the market and not enough research was done. So they're looking at the budget of what they need to make as opposed to like what the market's going to hold. And I think sometimes that there's a disconnect there. And Church and I, a lot of times we try to help people understand what the market's going to bear and then versus what you need, and then try to build a plan to get there through volume or whatever it is, as opposed to making it on margin because you don't expect to make the volume. And that's kind of where a lot of guys, I think, balance things out. And also on the flip side, sometimes guys are just cornered with crazy supply contracts and things like that, materials where they can't justify it either. So it's kind of a combo of the two. I guess to back up too with like one of the things for you uniquely, there's a lot of buyers out there for on-premise retail, and not a lot of them are, let's say, as personable. And one thing I tell people, and we talked about this before that we started, but your relationships that you have with your people that you work with and you choose to work with, and those that don't, you have extremely genuine and authentic relationships. And I think that's something that is also kind of unheard of anymore in this industry. It's becoming part of things are becoming very transactional as opposed to it doesn't need to be all relationships and no sales, but at the same time there's some balance there. And I think holding on to that is so crucial. So I guess joking, but not. I mean, how do you manage your day with dozens of reps walking in that one want to transact with you and the other ones that just love hanging around you because you're a breath of fresh on their side? You're the 15th stop of the day and you actually want to talk to them and hang out with them, where it's not just a transactional piece. So I guess that's a challenging time management piece for you as well.
It is, but I sort of, a few parts of that. Like, so first of all, as far as what my reputation may or may not be, I try to, I really hate cliche sayings, but one thing that I really try to live my life by is like, I would so much rather be hated for who I am than love. Wait, how is that? Love for who I am than hated for who I'm not, or
yep,
I forget. Right. I'm George Bushing it, but anyway, like
tomato.
Yeah, right.
He dropped the nuclear bomb.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. Like, I just try to be I feel like in my heart, I'm a genuine person, and like, I try to be who I am around these people. Like, I don't put on like a different face when I sit down at each table. Like, what you see is what you get. And, I genuinely want, like, man, life's hard, work's hard. Like, it's a crazy world. Like, I'd rather sit there and be like, so how are you doing before we jump into like what you have, going on. And I think that, for me, as far as time management goes, as long as I don't have like pop up, like people just pop in, I usually allocate like time for each person. Like, I know who's coming in, even if it's a text that morning, like, hey, what time are you available today? I can be like, anytime after 1, but if I have someone randomly, cold call me, show up, I can't promise anything, but I'll at least try to make time for them. Like, you're trying to do your job just as much as I'm trying to do my job. And, I just think that I look at it too I try to be really mindful of what reps have to go through. And like, you have multiple accounts that you're dealing with, multiple accounts that are run different ways, that want different things, and they're going to treat you different ways. And that's tough. That's got to be a really difficult, balance for anybody. And so, I try to be that breath of fresh air for people. And even if, I'm not in the mood, I try to look at it like, certain things are bigger than me. Like, even if I'm having a day, like, whatever, man, like, stuff your sorries in a sack. Like, this whole process, these interactions, they're all bigger than you. So treat these people with respect. And it's a symbiotic thing, because in return, they look out for you. I have people that they, because of these relationships we build, I'll get a text. It's like, hey man, just so you know, limited quantity of this just dropped. Do you want me to put one on hold for you? So I don't have to sit there and like scour all these lists. So it really works out best for everybody. I mean, just to not be a dick. And it's a shame that it's come to like what I consider to be, you know, just genuine human interactions are so rare that people kind of like separate you out. It's flattering, you know, I've had reps come in and be like, I always keep you as the last stop of the day. It's just a way to unwind. And I'm like, man, that's an ultimate compliment. Thanks. Like, let's have a beer and talk about your vacation. I don't care. Like, forget about life for a minute, man.
I mean, that empathy is unfortunately, like you're saying, not as common as we'd like it to be. Did you come from the restaurant business? I mean, I found, and my background is I started in restaurants when I was like 15, you know, working under the table, washing dishes and working my way through a kitchen all the way to running chains and nightclubs and everything else. And I find that people that have worked in the service industry, you know, as someone coming up through it, they have a different sense of empathy towards people that work their ass off. You know what I mean? That everybody's going to have a day. And if you lose your shit or you blame it on the people that come in front of you, you're never going to get through a shift, particularly in a restaurant. So how did you get into running Bull's Head? Because that empathy, if I had to guess, would say you probably worked in the service industry before you started running stuff. So
I started, the first restaurant job I had was at Hotel Hershey, really upscale hotel. And I started out in housekeeping just to get my foot in the door. And then I started doing room service. But, you know, you're down there in the kitchen with like all the high-end dining room people and you're watching all these interactions. And, you know, and I'm a fairly observant person with those things. So I'm like sitting there watching how people interact with one another. And I'm like, man, like this is not for, you know, the thin-skinned. And I left there and then I worked at a French restaurant. Fine dining restaurant in Marietta, which is no longer there, but actually just reopened in Lancaster called Josephine's. So I was there for a handful of years. I did the chain thing for a minute. I was the tasting room manager at Trogues prior to Bull's Head. And one of my best friends, Joey, was running Bull's Head before me. And he had just bought the Railroad House in Marietta and texted me and was like, do you want to put your name in the ring for running Bull's Head? And I was like, absolutely. You know, I love Trogues. I love what they, you know, gave to me, but it was just time to try something new. And it all worked out in the end, I'd say. But no, I've been a restaurant guy I'm 38 now, so like 20 years.
Yeah, man. We're a different breed, and I'm gonna throw myself in there, but we're a different breed. I always, and I think most restaurant people, when I ran restaurants, I made every server do a Friday night on the dish pit, for the same reason that I think every person that goes into a restaurant should have to work a month in a restaurant. You understand that, you know, no server that ever works a dish pit on a Friday night will ever talk down to a dishwasher ever again.
Ever.
And so when you kind of step into somebody else's shoes, you have a different view of the world, even in general, man. The people that work in restaurants have the most patience that I have ever seen. And nowadays in particular, you know, it's probably, you know, there are some customers that are probably their lives have been saved just because of all the patience learned by serving service staff.
Oh my gosh, yes. You know, like I don't know, I have a 30-minute drive home and I need that 30 minutes just to come down from my day. And like I get home and I say to my girlfriend, I'm just like, man, I just need another like 10 minutes just to decompress because I just dealt with, you know, hundreds of people today. And luckily, I mean, she's a rock star when it comes to all that stuff. And she never even worked in the industry, but she just understands what goes into it. And I think that if you have any understanding of what front of house and back of house have to do with, because they're both equally as important, equally as difficult in their separate ways, it does give you like more of a respect just for people in general and how to talk to people. I mean, as much as I want to regret working at managing a Red Robin for like 9 months, you know, the one thing I got to give them, man, is they make you train on every single position.
Yep.
So like when I'm training to be a manager, I'm not trained to be like, you know, not knocking serve, not anything, but like you train everywhere. And, you know, you really get instilled in your head. And it was sort of started when I was at Hotel Hershey because the standards are so high that it's like, you do this, you don't like, everything you're doing has to have a purpose. If you're going somewhere, take something with you. And I always think back, I played soccer most of my life, and I've had a coach that would always be like, make every pass have a purpose. And like, I think that like all the time, where I'm like, oh, if you're going somewhere and you walk by a dirty table, grab the stuff off the table, man. Like, do your job. And I feel like when you work in that industry for so long, like that work ethic's really just ingrained.
For sure. I think we might be doppelgangers. I played soccer my entire life too. And I coach my kids' soccer travel teams too. So
I have a 5-month-old, so I'm really hoping he gets into that. I mean, he's looking like he's going to be a giant, because I mean his mom's 5'9" and I'm all shoulders, so I'm pretty sure he's either going to be a tight end or maybe a goalie. I don't know.
Yeah, I got a couple of those, and I have a goalie for soccer. I got 2 lacrosse goalies. I got a middle linebacker who also plays for soccer. So yeah, I'm
strong bloodline. That's Scottish blood.
That's Scottish bloodline we're talking about.
I think that transitions to my next topic is first off, congratulations on the recent addition to your family. And I guess too is that, the three of us are, we'll pride ourselves, despite my thinning hair / being bald up here now. While we are the younger parts in the middle road of the age of the industry, the three of us each of us are nearly 20 years into the industry, which is kind of crazy to think about. Most times somebody, you think of somebody 20 years in an industry, you think of them being a lot older. With that said, I'd like to dive in a little bit to the transition of being in this industry as a non-father, and then being in this industry as a father, and how that changes how you work, how you live your life, and kind of what that means. Because a lot of times people don't understand how that it really does change everything about how you conduct your life in the alcohol industry when you start to have children.
Before, I think that like a lot of people in the industry, you immerse yourself in so deeply that you're working like 50 hours is the norm. 60 hours is like, man, you worked a lot this week, but it's not like, holy shit, you worked 60 hours. It's like, yeah, I did 60 this week. What'd you do? Oh, I did 63. Oh, you got me. And actually, I noticed a few years ago that I was kind of burning myself out, and actually watching Chef Sean Brock down in Nashville. He did a chef's table, and he talked about basically burnout, and like, it really kind of watching that sort of made me reevaluate the way I was handling things and the way I was doing things, and how things have changed, and that you shouldn't wear it like a badge of honor, like how many hours you worked. Like, that's basically saying like you didn't get to live your life. You didn't get to do anything. And when I found out I was going to be a dad, one of the things I really wanted to do was start sort of making sure that I was at work less and home more. And I've gotten it down to like where I'm working like a fairly strict 40 hours a week, and which is unheard of. And it's funny because like part of me still in a weird way resents myself for only working 40 hours. I'm like, you're only doing 40 hours, bless you. And I'm like, you're only doing 40 hours a week, man. Like, you need to be there more. And I'm like, no, you don't. Like, you're getting everything done that you need to do. You need to be with your family, because that's what counts. That's what the most important thing is being there for my girlfriend, being there for my son, and everything else will fall into place. It'll work itself out. There's nothing in this industry that's enough of an emergency to take me away from them. And so as long as I'm doing my job to the best of my capabilities, and I'm not missing things, then that 40 hours is what's working for me. So I just really adjusted how long I'm at work, but it took a good few months to like, and it's still, it's still difficult to get it into your head that like, it's okay to work a normal 40 hours, because even if people around you are hitting 50, 60, like that's how they live their life. That's what they want to do, but that's not what I want to do with mine. So I don't want to be a slave to the man. I'd rather get to watch my son roll over for the first time and, have him shit up his back and stuff like that, and be there for those moments.
It's honestly, man, that's it took COVID for me to get out of that cycle. It absolutely, I mean, the creation of my company was based on that exact reason. And I tried, shifting industries. I was in the restaurant and I'd work 80 hours a week. It was who I was. You know what I mean? I closed 6 nights a week, and sometimes I opened 5 of those days. I couldn't. And it was my own issues of not being able to let something go, or being like, can they handle it? Or even if I knew they could handle it, maybe what if the computer system goes down? You know what I mean? There was just so many different restaurants are, organized chaos, and I thrived in it, but that didn't mean that it was healthy. Right. So, COVID made me stop. It made me go home. It made me sit with my kids. It made me realize that stuff was way more important than sitting and finishing an Excel file at 6:30, 7 o'clock at night at the brewery desk, because I just needed to prove something to myself. Who knew what it was? But I found that with COVID, I was able to just take a deep breath, spending this time with my kids and being like, they need my help with homework now, right? I got the same joy out of finishing that Excel spreadsheet twice as much helping my kids, do fractions and multiply fractions. And so
I'm scared of that, man. I'm not a fraction guy.
Oh, just wait, man. They don't even teach it the way that we learned it anymore. It's a whole new way. And
well, that works because I didn't really learn it that well the first time. So
we have 6 kids in this house. We're a blended family with 6 kids, all the way from 8 to 16. And I can tell you that the math homework is very varying. And I'm kind of just hoping the younger ones just stay in that area, because I'm really, I get lost a little later on in the math. So I can do beer math and margins, but we start getting fractions and stuff, I'm out.
It's funny. I might not be able to be great at writing a creative story, but I can math with the best of them. Maybe not calculus, but get me through. I can get you through pre-calc, but I don't know if I got the calculus in me anymore. But
I'll be calling you. I'll be calling you soon.
We'll just do, instead of our podcast being about Algon, to be like, how do we
kids
do
homework?
What is PEMDAS? What do you find, and kind of on the same line here, when people look at our jobs, and, I know as a supplier rep for a long time, they're like, oh, you're taking the distributors and out golfing and playing, what kind of common myths are you finding that are true, aren't true? You know what I mean? That you find that are like, oh, you sell beer for a living, or, oh, you just work at a restaurant, you just drinking beer and eating fries all day. What kind of common myths do you find is either a misconception or is spot on?
I mean, there's always a little truth to it, eating fries all day. It happens, especially, hey, you worked in a Red Robin, dude. Endless fries, man. They're always there.
Those garlic farm. I mean, come on.
Yeah. So I find, one of the things I remind myself pretty regularly is that my job is a lot of people's hobby. And so I kind of try to pinch myself with that. Yeah. I was fortunate enough on Monday, John Trogner invited me down to Trogs for a brew day, a collaboration they did with Warwick Farms Brewing. And, I'm like sitting there and I'm dealing with, I don't know why I started it that way. I'm sitting there talking to like all these guys in the industry, just hanging out, drinking some beers and just talking shop. And then that night I went and emceed a bourbon dinner here at Bull's Head. And I'm like, man, what an exhausting day. And I was like, dude, like you literally today you drank all day. Like you got paid to hang out with one of, a pioneer in the brewing industry and a young up and coming brewery. And then you went and drank good bourbon, ate good food, and talked to people about bourbon. And you can't get better than that. And so like, there's times I just have to pinch myself where I'm like, man, there's people sitting in a cubicle and just like, a very office space like life. And so, yeah, like parts of my job are awesome and are, I do get to have those perks of going to breweries and going to distilleries and trying a bunch of new things. But it is a lot of work. Like it's a lot of social interaction and that is exhausting. And like always kind of having to be on, that wears you down a little bit. Yeah. So like, that's why I like
it right there. I think you hit it right there. Always having to be on, having to be like on stage.
Well, it's funny because of my persona at work and like, I'm a social guy, but at the same time, when I go home, man, I want to go home. Like I want to go home. I want to sit on my couch with my fiance. I guess I've called her my girlfriend. She's my fiance. So I don't want to confuse people that I have two different.
You're living the life over there, bro.
I know, right? Lititz. Woo! That Amish life, baby. Yeah. So, like to me, if I can work a normal day and then just go sit on the couch and like sip a little bourbon and just like hang out with her after the kids gone to bed and just talk shit on anything, like that means so much more to me than being like, oh man, I could go to these bars. Like, yeah, those options exist, but man, I just did that all day. I did that all week. I've done that for 20 years now. Like, It just doesn't appeal to me anymore. But
I think too, it's on the flip side as well. Like I always struggle with actually turning off sometimes. So when you're at that hobby or that brewery tour or something like that, like I think of I think of the like a tour I was on, tours I've been on when it's just for recreational. And like if maybe the tour guide doesn't have the answer to the question or something like that, just staying silent when you know the answer. And I've actually said stuff sometimes and I get the nudge or whatever, and it's like, and I catch myself and I'm like, okay, yeah, just be a customer right now, be a consumer, don't be a industry veteran, like just be a consumer, like let everybody else, because the other people need to enjoy it as consumers as well. And I think it's interesting you say that, because that's something that I definitely go with. I think here on the lessons learned. So really with lessons learned, good and bad. So kind of talking about over the course of your career, you know, some ideas that you might thought of just done on a whim and then they worked out really well and a good lesson from it. Or on the flip side, you know, a lesson learned where you might be able to tell somebody getting into the industry, hey, listen, do this, or you know, don't waste your time making this mistake and learning this lesson. Here's a handout for you, you know, that kind of thing.
you know, I'm a firm believer, at least this is what works for me, that I've learned more from failures over the years than I have successes. And whether that's my own personal ones or watching owners of where I worked make these mistakes and how they affected the business, that's how you learn, you know. Like it's that I keep saying I hate cliche sayings and I'm knocking them out of the park, but smooth seas never made a skilled sailor. And you know, you need to fuck up every once in a while. And I think that if I had to say, for me, what I think to tell people is like, be on time, don't steal, stay off hard drugs. You know, like, you know, I think of like the people that like ask me, oh, and don't close a bar down when you open the next morning. Like, don't do that. You might think it's a good idea in the moment, but you're going to regret that 4 hours later. But I think of my friends that own restaurants and they call me about like a reference for someone, and they'll be like, especially now with staffing being what it is, they'll call me and be like, do they steal? And I'm like, no. They on any hard drugs? I'm like, not that I know of. I'm like, all right, done. And it's like, all right, man, look, if you can just keep your head up and you know, stay clean.
Those are pretty.
You know, have a good time. Yeah. You know,
I mean, I feel like that's a pretty
good.
good life. Like those are some good guidelines for life. Now,
yeah, you know, like enjoy yourself. All right, but know what works for you and know what's a bad idea. And I'll just keep it that kind of vague.
Those are three foundational things that do bleed out to all the other behavioral traits.
Yeah.
Those are the three flags. That's a great
man. Like come to work on time. That number one. Like just be on time. We'll figure the rest out.
Absolutely. Well, hey, Carson.
I think that particular statement, I think I've said that when running restaurants, just show up. I need your body here. We will figure out the rest of where you're going to be, but just get here and we can do something.
Absolutely.
Carson, we appreciate you taking the time, taking the time out of your day today for us. We look forward to everything you have going on here. And once everything calms down here, we look forward to the massive influx you continue to have coming into your place and keeping you busy there. So we can't thank you enough for taking the time here today. And as always, it's just always a pleasure getting to talk to you. Yeah,
man, it's great seeing you guys. It's nice meeting you. It's nice. I mean, hell, Nate, I haven't seen you for like 2 years. So
maybe even longer.
You're half the size you were, but you still look handsome as hell. So
I'm still burly. I'm still burly and bearded, and we still look like we could welcome you in our family.
That's what counts, man. But you guys are welcome down to the pub anytime. We'll put you up for the night. It's great to it's just great to see you. Great to talk to you, and thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Carson. You guys have a great day.
Take care, guys. Thank you.
Yeah.